Lewis Hamilton, Mercedes teammate threatens to quit Formula One. Hamilton is the leading driver for Mercedes and Valtteri Bottas will once again provide support this season. The pair will be backed up by third and reserve driver Ocon, who is without a drive following the fall of Force India. Mercedes are expected to part ways with Bottas at the end of the year if he does not perform to the same level as Hamilton. And Ocon could be in line to step up and replace the Finn. But if he is not given a chance to drive in motorsport's premier competition, then he is considering calling time on his career. "I want to be world champion one day. It's my goal and my dream," Ocon told Autohebdo. "Of course it's not great not to compete this season, but I'm still focused on F1 and I think it's the right choice. If I do not find a drive for 2020, then it will turn to something because I have to continue working and find the track in the race." Ocon could be called upon at any moment this season to step in for Hamilton or Bottas. And he is doing everything possible to be ready for any situations which may arise. "I will be present at all the Grands Prix," he added. "I must stay on the page and informed of everything that happens in case I have to return at one time or another." You never know what the future holds in F1. Hamilton is the favorite to win his 6th world title this year. Success would take him one win behind Michael Schumacher's all-time record. Next news top 10, Ferrari bombshells in F1. The news that Maurizio Arrivabene would stand down as Ferrari team principal for the 2019 Formula One season, to be replaced by current technical director Mashiach Binotto, was big. It was, dare we say, a bombshell. But Ferrari have, without doubt, the richest history of bombshells of any team in the F1 paddock. We've collected 10 of the most explosive here, and given them a bombshell rating out of 10. Enjoy the most dramatic off-track moments from the Scuturious, operatic past. Prost sacked for calling his car a truck after a strong first season at Ferrari in 1990. 1991 should have been even better for Alain Prost. But having won 5 races the previous year, Prost won a grand total of zilch in 1991, as the relationship between the Frenchman and Ferrari turned toxic. The team refused Prost's request to start the Spanish Grand Prix on slicks. "If I'd hit them, I could have won," fumed Prost to the media after the race while at the preceding Grand Prix in Japan. The shock absorbers failed on his 643, leading Prost to tell reporters that his car had been like a horrible truck to drive. That was enough for the Ferrari management to humiliatingly give the Frenchman the flick with one race of the season left to go, his place taken by Minardi's Gianni Morbidelli in Australia. Bombshell rating, 8/10. Insulting a Ferrari F1 car in any air never goes down well, a lesson that Prost found out the hard way. Lauda leaves before the end of the season after claiming title. Niki Lauda became disgruntled with Ferrari following his near-life-ending crash at the 1976 German Grand Prix. As he lay in hospital fighting to stay alive, Enzo Ferrari had drafted in Carlos Reutemann, the driver Lauda didn't like at the best of times, to compete in the Austrian's place at the Italian Grand Prix. When Lauda announced that he, too, planned to drive at Monza, Ferrari opted to run 3 cars rather than withdrawing Reutemann, while also subjecting Lauda to, in his view, a humiliating and unnecessary in-house medical. Ferrari then ratcheted up the tension by pairing Lauda and Reutemann together for the 1977 season. It was enough to convince Lauda to look elsewhere. He duly claimed the 1977 title, announced he was leaving for Brabham, and then, when Ferrari revealed that it would run Lauda's 1978 replacement Gilles Villeneuve in a third car for the last 2 races of the season, decided he'd had enough and departed early. Bombshell rating, 8/10. Can you imagine Lewis Hamilton winning the title and then walking out on Mercedes 2 races early? Or Mercedes letting him? Mansell announces his retirement midway through 1990. Nigel Mansell may have been one of F1's bravest drivers on track, but he had one fatal flaw, a highly developed victim complex. And it was this weakness that teammate Alain Prost spent the 1990 season ruthlessly exploiting. With Prost having worked hard to get the Ferrari mechanics on his side, at that year's British Grand Prix, Prost and Mansell's chassis were switched behind Mansell's back, a move that would prove to be the final straw in Mansell's fractious relationship with the Scuderia. Mansell qualified the Prost car on pole, but once the gearbox had packed up during the race, the Englishman went straight to the media and announced out of nowhere that he would retire from F1 at the end of the season. A bombshell, for sure, but Mansell had one more surprise in store. 10 days after the Italian Grand Prix, where he explicitly reiterated to journalists that there was no chance he'd be in F1 in 1991, he announced that he would, in fact, be in F1 in 1991, with Williams. Bombshell rating, 9/10. The equivalent of Sebastian Vettel announcing after his 2018 German Grand Prix crash that he was quitting F1, then changing his mind and going back to Red Bull instead. Alonso quits Ferrari for McLaren following 3 seasons in which neither Kimi Räikkönen nor Felipe Massa had convincingly filled Michael Schumacher's shoes, despite Räikkönen's 2007 title and Massa's 2008 near-miss. Fernando Alonso was seen as the man who could lead Ferrari back to their early noughties pomp. He nearly did, too, losing out on adding 2 more world championships to his collection by just 9 points, 5 in 2010, 4 in 2012, as the Sebastian Vettel, Red Bull juggernaut came on song. In truth, though, Alonso's strong performances at Ferrari owed much to his spectacular ability managing to transcend less spectacular machinery. Frustration at that machinery reached a peak at the 2013 Hungarian Grand Prix, where Alonso told journalists that his ideal present for his 32nd birthday would be someone else's car. Things deteriorated from there, and Ferrari's underwhelming first turbo hybrid offering, the F14T, proved too much to bear for the Spaniard. Despite the 2 years left on his contract, he announced that he was off ski, and with nowhere left to turn to, Alonso found himself driven back into the arms of McLaren, the team he'd ignominiously departed in 2007 after just 1 season. Bombshell rating, 9/10. In 2010, it seemed inconceivable that Alonso and Ferrari's relationship would end so badly 4 years later. More inconceivable, however, was the idea that Alonso would end up back at McLaren. Ferrari's threat to quit F1 backfires on Luca Di Montezemolo. Engine changes, budget caps, profit sharing, all are issues that have caused Ferrari to threaten to quit F1 this millennium. But in 2014, Ferrari chairman Luca Di Montezemolo's critique of the sport would come back to bite him. After Ferrari endured a disheartening start to F1's turbo hybrid era, Di Montezemolo, who'd been team manager at the Scuderia in the 70s and led their revival in the 90s, had told the Wall Street Journal during an interview in June 2014, "F1 isn't working." Fiat Chrysler CEO Sergio Marchionne, however, clearly thought it was Di Montezemolo that wasn't working, and following Ferrari's dismal run of form, Alonso would finish the year in 6th place in the drivers' standings, Räikkönen a lowly 12th. It was announced in September that Marchionne would replace Di Montezemolo as Ferrari chairman. Sports results are absolutely fundamental for Ferrari, and Luca knows that as much as I do, Mashiach ominously told the media just days before the De Montezemolo ousting. Winning is part of the company's DNA and that must continue. Bombshell rating, 7/10, replacing De Montezemolo after 22 years at the helm of Ferrari was a seismic shift for the Scuderia, just as Mashiach's tragic passing was in 2018. Mashiach sacked as team principal after 7 months on April 14, 2014, the headlines ran, "Why Ferrari chose Marco Mashiach to replace Stefano Domenicali." By November 25 of that same year, the headlines were, "Why Ferrari F1 team dropped Marco Mashiach for Maurizio Arrivabene." The 7 months in between had been a disaster for Ferrari on track, but Mashiach was credited in part with putting in place a recovery plan that saw Sebastian Vettel arrive at the team for 2015, and win his second race in red, to boot, as well as carrying out some shrewd restructuring. So what had happened? Chiefly, De Montezemolo, the man who'd hired Mashiach, had been replaced by Mashiach, and the new chairman was keen to stamp his vision on the F1 team. On top of that, it was also believed that Mashiach's lack of F1 experience, the clean slate quality that had led to the former Ferrari North America CEO getting hired in the first place, ended up contributing to his downfall, with whispers in the paddock that his forthright management style irked then F1 boss Bernie Ecclestone. With Arrivabene seen as someone who could more delicately tread F1's political lines, the former Philip Morris marketing man got the gig. Bombshell rating, 6/10, bumped off after 7 months of doing a decent job. Mashiach Binotto will hope to avoid a similar fate to Mashiach when the buck stops with him in 2019. Surtees exits Ferrari mid-season, having won the 1964 World Championship for the team. By 1966, the honeymoon period between John Surtees and Ferrari had well and truly ended. At the season opener in Monaco, a disgruntled Surtees was forced to slug around a Principality in the heavy V12 engine 312 as teammate Lorenzo Bandini was handed the ideal for the job V6 engine 246. Then at the following race in Spa, Surtees won brilliantly from pole position in appalling conditions, only to receive a nearfall from team manager Eugenio Dragoni for having let a Maserati-engined car run in front of him for part of the race. Things came to a head at the Le Mans 24 hours a week later. Dragoni, playing to Fiat boss Gianni Agnelli, opted to let Agnelli's nephew Ludovico Scarfiotti start the race instead of Surtees, destroying the team's carefully thought-out strategy to break the mighty Ford GT40S. In sense, Surtees, a tough customer at the best of times, refused to compete. The following Wednesday, he drove his Ferrari 330 GT road car to Maranello and, after meeting with Enzo Ferrari, announced his decision to leave the team. Bombshell rating, 6/10. Enzo Ferrari may have maintained that drivers were as replaceable as light bulbs, but Il Gran John was not just any driver, and his departure signaled the beginning of a 3-year slump for the Scuderia. The Spygate scandal, one of the biggest scandals to ever hit F1, didn't center around a racetrack. It centered, instead, around document image processing systems, a photocopying shop in Walton-on-Thames in the leafy English county of Surrey. It was here, in 2007, that 780 pages of confidential Ferrari documents were scanned onto a pair of CDs. When the shop alerted Ferrari's Stefano Domenicali about the suspicious activity, it opened up an industrial espionage investigation that rocked Formula One to its foundations. The documents, reportedly handed to McLaren chief designer Mike Coughlin by Ferrari's disgruntled chief mechanic Nigel Stepney, detailed every significant technical element of Ferrari's F2007 contender. McLaren earned a $100 million fine for having this technical gold dust in their possession, while both Stepney and Coughlin lost their jobs. Actually, Stepney officially lost his for reportedly tampering with the Ferrari car's fuel tanks ahead of the Monaco Grand Prix. Stepney would insist until his death in 2014 that he'd been set up, while Coughlin later enjoyed a brief F1 renaissance with Williams, before moving stateside to work in NASCAR. Bombshell rating, 10/10, bearing in mind that McLaren were the equivalent of Mercedes back then, this story blasted through Formula One like a hypercane. Ferrari staff quit en masse to form ATS. While Enzo Ferrari may have been a tough old customer, it's rumored that his wife, Laura, was even tougher. A constant presence in the affairs of her husband's company, by 1961, a number of employees had had enough. An open letter was written to Ferrari in which a group of rebels threatened to go elsewhere unless Mrs. Ferrari's influence was curbed. It wasn't, and so it was that in 1961, Ferrari sales manager Girolamo Gardini, team manager Romolo Tivoni, chief engineer Carlo Chitti and chief of racing car development Giotto Bizzarini staged the Great Walkout. Tivoni, Chitti and Bizzarini immediately formed ATS. Automobili Turismo e-Sport, not to be confused with the ATS team that competed in Formula One from 1978 to 1984, taking on F1 for one season in 1963. Although given that the team's best performance of the year was Phil Hill's 11th place at Monza, it's unlikely the new squad caused the Ferraris too many sleepless nights. Bombshell rating, 7/10. The cost of so many of Ferrari's top brass walking out as one could have been monumental. Fortunately the old man had the likes of future stars Mauro Forghieri and Gianpaolo Dall'Oro waiting in the wings. Ferrari's decision to break Kimi Raikkonen's contract 1 year early to bring Fernando Alonso into the fold for 2010 is still a bit of a mystery. Some pointed to Alonso's arrival bringing Santander money to the team, others believed that the team's senior management thought Raikkonen's motivation had gone off the boil, while then Ferrari team principal Stefano Domenicali reportedly pointed to Alonso's superior skills as a development driver. Either way, an unhappy Raikkonen was declared a free agent for 2010, a decision made easier to swallow by the reported negation $20 million he was paid not to turn up the following season in his red overalls. While the Finn apparently pondered a return to McLaren for 2010, he eventually plumped on leaving F1 for the World Rally Championship, spending 2 years driving Citroëns before returning to the Formula One paddock with Lotus in 2012, before Ferrari. Sweet irony brought him back to partner Alonso for 2014. Bombshell rating, 8/10 out of favor at Ferrari 2 years after winning the driver's title for them? Raikkonen and John Surtees would certainly have had a lot to talk about. Thank you for watching the video. Be sure to share and subscribe to your channel to get the latest sports news around the world. Wished health and success. Goodbye.